This MMA 30 segment is brought to you by Cheaterville.com. Don't be the last to know. Joining us here in the MMA 30 studios, we have Ryan Couture. How you doing, man?
Doing great. How about you guys?
Good. Got a fight coming up this coming Friday. It's going to be over at the Pearl inside the Palm. Strikeforce is back. I got a word that tickets start at just $40 if you want to go see Strikeforce over at the Pearl inside the Palms. And this is the long-awaited return of Ryan Couture to fighting in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'm fired up to be back in town. It's been since I was an amateur, since I fought in front of a local crowd here, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I remember you fought, was it Bollinger was your last amateur fight over at Tough Enough at the Orleans, and that was a crazy fight that night.
Yeah, that was a wild one, and hoping not to have to go into such deep water this time, but yeah. But I'm game for whatever. It's going to be a fun night.
Go ahead, man.
I was going to say you last fought in Washington, right? And then, but you're originally from the Northwest. But how's it like fighting back at home? Do you prefer fighting here in Las Vegas over fighting, other parts of the country?
I'd much rather fight here just because traveling to fight is a pain. I mean, this way I get to eat my own groceries, sleep in my own bed, train at my own gym right up through weigh-ins and up until the fight. Everything's much easier than having to pack and travel and deal with all that headache.
Maka Watson is the guy that you're fighting. He spends some of his time training here in Las Vegas as well, so another hometown boy.
Yep. I think that'll be a fun matchup for the fans. We've got rival gyms, sort of. He's training over with Vanderlei's camp, and we were all kind of miffed that they got the Gym of the Year award last year over Extreme Couture, so looking forward to kind of having that gym versus gym rivalry showdown.
He's got a slight edge on you when it comes to experience as a professional. His record is 4-1, but your level of training and the amount of experience that you've been showing in your fights, even though your record only says that you're 2-1, I think it's a fair thing to say that you don't look like someone who's new in their professional career. Is that how you feel as a fighter?
Yeah, I think between my amateur background and the high level of training that I get over at Extreme Couture, I think that makes up for what I'm giving up in experience in this fight.
Strikeforce again happening this Friday over at the Pearl inside the Palms. Tickets start at just $40, and if you want to make a whole night out of it, if you buy tickets to Strikeforce, they're going to let you in some of the clubs there at the Palms afterwards. You can have a great time. A lot's been going on with Strikeforce recently. We saw Nick Diaz come over to the UFC to get that immediate title shot against George St. Pierre, and then, well, that went away.
Yeah, that was a big headache, I'm sure, for everybody involved.
What's your perspective on that? Do you think that fighters should be required to show up to press conferences even if they've reached the level of Nick Diaz?
Yeah, I think it's part of the job. I mean, if you don't sell the fight, then how do you expect anybody to want to buy it? And if nobody buys it, then how can you ask to get paid? I think you as much as they can be a pain, you have to go along with those commitments. And his side of the story sounds like he didn't necessarily understand what the consequences were and didn't know exactly what it was he was scheduled for. But if he's not sure, he's got to make sure. And if Dana White tells you to be somewhere, you're there.
Well, as a professional fighter, how much of a pain in the ass is it to go to the press conferences? Is that something that you personally loathe, or do you think that it changes based on the fighter?
I haven't had to do a full-out press conference yet, still being so new to all of this, and the shows I'm fighting on are nowhere near the magnitude of the one that he was, still is fighting on, I guess. But, doing press, some days you don't feel like it, and it's not probably my favorite thing, but I'm getting used to it, and it can be kind of fun if you look at it the right way.
You're saying you don't enjoy these banters with us every so often?
You guys don't count as press.
Yeah, we're not journalists.
Is it because you can curse at us and hit us?
Yeah, press implies professionalism.
There's the rub there. Do you think in that Nick Diaz situation, though, do you think that the punishment fit the crime, though?
I think they just really wanted to make a point and drive that point home, and they did. I think he probably won't get caught slipping again if he gets another shot. And I think the card doesn't suffer. It's still a great pair of matchups, shuffling those around, doing the musical chairs the way they did.
In a roundabout way, he kind of has drawn more press to this fight, though, in him not actually showing up and doing press. Yeah. So an argument could be made for that. I'm obviously we're all very ingrained in mixed martial arts and love it as a sport, but even the casual fans are talking about this.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty smart move on the part of the UFC to kind of use his unwillingness to do press to get a whole lot more press than they would have gotten just from him doing interviews.
Yeah, we don't know exactly the dollar amount, but Dave Meltzer from Yahoo Sports posted a story, I believe it was yesterday or a couple of days ago, where he said that the actual dollar amount that Nick Diaz lost because he's not in the title fight is around $1 million.
Oh, my God.
If he's co-main event, he might not be getting his cut of the pay-per-view, and I'm not sure how his contract's set up, but if he lost out on that, that's going to be a huge financial hit.
Yeah, even sponsor dollars and everything else, I'm sure, took a hit. I mean, he'll still get a lot of publicity facing BJ Penn, but, I mean, $1 million is a serious fine.
I think he'll make it up on the back end, though. I think, honestly, I don't know. I'm curious to see what Ryan's take is on this, but I think if he gets past BJ, he gets the next title shot, and that matchup between GSP and Diaz is going to have even more fanfare, and it will do even more pay-per-view buys because of this kind of rivalry that's kind of been created because of this incident.
It's possible. He loses the BJ, though, and he basically falls off the map. I mean, the welterweight division, although there's not a lot of guys that you go, yeah, he could easily beat George St. Pierre, there is still a line, and if he falls to the back of that line and has to start fighting guys like, Ellenberger and Rick Story, and I mean, all those kind of like middle of the road contenders. I mean, those are tough fights for him. So do you think that BJ Penn beats Nick Diaz or Nick Diaz beats BJ Penn?
I think it's a really interesting matchup. I wouldn't be surprised to see BJ take Nick down and then see what happens on the ground. I'd give Diaz the edge in the striking, but I think all around BJ's a little bit better.
Do you think that training for that 5-round fight, though, that Nick Diaz was, because he was going into a title fight, do you think his cardio is going to outlast BJ's? Because BJ's had some issues with cardio at 170 in the past.
Yeah, I don't think Nick would have had a hard time with cardio regardless. He's always in shape and ready to go. I've seen him fight 5 rounds with Nunes at a pretty high pace, so I think he'll have the cardio advantage anytime he ever fights BJ, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah, and I mean, he does all those triathlons and everything else, so Nick Diaz is in pretty good shape.
I think that has the potential to be fight of the year. I mean, the two of the most exciting guys in mixed martial arts, at a high level. I'm excited for it. I actually like that fight better than I like GSP versus Diaz, to be honest.
I actually like the Carlos Condit versus GSP better than I like the Diaz versus GSP, because I think that Carlos Condit poses a lot of interesting threats. I've been a fan of Carlos Condit for a long time now, since back in his WEC days. And I thought that he kind of didn't get really a fair rub when he first came into the UFC. He had a couple of tough fights, and the one to Martin Kampmann didn't go his way.
Yep.
And that's to the credit of Martin Kampmann, though. I don't think taking anything away from Carlos in that fight. Kampmann's a tough dude. But do you think that Carlos Condit has anything that's really going to test George St. Pierre?
I think similar to how I felt about the Diaz matchup for St. Pierre is that you kind of pick your poison with Carlos because he's so good standing and he's so good on the ground. But I know St. Pierre's going to be able to take him down if he wants. So just gonna kind of come down to whether he's slick enough off his back to submit GSP or to sweep him. And I don't think that he is, but I think he can make the fight interesting that way.
What?
It looked like you had something to add.
No, I didn't. I got nothing to add. I agree with him.
All right, well, the big fight is happening this Friday. It's going to be over at the Pearl Inside the Palms. Ryan Couture back in Las Vegas, fighting again, taking on Maka Watson. That fight is on the main card. You can watch a lot of great fights that evening. And again, tickets start at just $40 if you want to go see Strikeforce over at the Pearl Inside the Palms this coming Friday night. Ryan, always great to see you, man.
Likewise.
Coming up here on the MMA 30 Radio Hour, we're talking about UFC Fight Night 25. It's the Battle on the Bayou. It's tonight in New Orleans. Jake Shields versus Jake Ellenberger in the main event. That's coming up. Also, we'll tell you how you can get a chance to hang out with us while we do the MMA 30 Radio Hour live. Starting in just a couple of weeks from now, we're actually going to be out for the next 4 weeks broadcasting live from somewhere. We'll tell you all about that in just a moment. This is FM News Radio, KXNT 100.5 FM with the MMA 30 Radio Hour. This MMA 30 segment is brought to you by Cheaterville.com. Don't be the last to know.